Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Back in to talk about my goals and plans for what I'm going to be maining and alting for Season 3. With Season 2, I started off obviously on Priest and pushed a lot of IO very early, around 10.1.5. I then started playing more Paladin. My Paladin surpassed my Priest for a little while, then I went back to Priest in like mid 10.1.5 into 10.1.7, and then my Priest overlapped my Paladin. Played a bunch of them. Historically, Paladin's the first healer I ever really made, and it's one healer that I've always constantly enjoyed playing. But obviously, going into next season, I'm going to be maining Priest for my guild, for early progression, all of that stuff. I plan to be playing Disc on most of the later encounters from what I've seen. I was really worried about how well Disc would be able to like fit in with some of the encounters and like the bursts of damage going out, primarily from like the mindset of like always having those minute and a half super big bursts. But I'm leaning towards more Mindbender gameplay, possibly Shadow Fiend for like some specific bosses if the minute and a half ramp timers are going to look to be very good. But I'm leaning more towards these 30-second type timers from what I've seen thus far in my own testing and from talking to others for how to play Disc in the new raid. And I anticipate playing something actually kind of similar when it comes to Mythic Plus, where having like the high Mindbender and Shadow Covenant uptime in dungeons is really potent, but it feels like you're a little GCD locked. So I think it's going to be something that feels a little bit better when I have like obscene amounts of haste, maybe like haste cap, like 53, 5400 rating haste. It's actually going to feel insanely good in dungeons. But I also kind of want to weigh that versus the effect of like possibly Shadow Fiend feeling strong without having as much haste required, so I could maybe run more like verse or more crit if I'm still playing like some Divine Aegis stuff. TBD. I'll have my guides for 10.2 and everything like that out pretty soon. Just been some like initial thoughts because things naturally always change as it comes out. That being said, some early encounters for the raid. I do expect to be playing Holy for things like Gnarl Root or Council or Laradar, where the ramp timers are just kind of annoying, or it's just better to have like the Holy Priest Guardian Spirit to help you heal ads on things like Laradar. I anticipate that being like the first thing that I go into the race with, or our pseudo race, since we finished like what, world 40th or something, 43rd last time. So if fights are going to be making sense, I plan to be playing Disc for them. For the ones that it might be like borderline or it's just easier to be playing as Holy, that's probably what I'm going to be doing going into it. Well, after the 10.1.5 rework, I played a lot of Pally, pushing into higher keys, made guides on it, all that stuff. And going forward, I really do want to continue like maining Priest as often as I can when it comes to pushing up high level M+. But there's always times where naturally I'm not going to have my team or, you know, other people within my network to push for more IO. And there's been times where I kind of just like sit around like pug hell whenever I'm streaming, and say, be sure to check out the live stream if you guys are enjoying the YouTube content, by the way. But I also want to make sure I have some other more concrete goals in mind when it comes to pushing IO on characters or just like growing them, because I feel like throughout this expansion in particular, I no longer am like in this position where I'm maintaining 3 or 4 alts and prepping for every single raid tier where I'm raiding 12, 14 hours a day like I did when I was in Imperative or when I was in Future. And while it's been nice, like I actually really like the game more when I'm not playing an obscene amount, I also want to have like more direct goals. And that's something that I haven't personally set for myself when playing the game, because it's almost always been dictated by whatever my raid team is doing. And so now playing more than enough to meet the needs of my raid team, which is great, so I don't feel that pressure of like, oh my god, I have to do all these things. But then I also don't feel as much of like a specific direction of like, oh, I really want to get on so I can meet these goals or meet this objective. And whenever I've made videos in the past, some people have talked about like their goal every season, their objective every season. So I'm kind of curious as to what others have set for themselves when it comes to some of the alt gameplay. Because for my Paladin, I fully expect to start weaving it into higher keys, because I expect Paladin to be great for higher keys. And my primary hope there is that there's going to be some comps where it's going to feel really good to play with Disc, some comps it's going to feel really good to play with Paladin, and as I'm playing with a variety of high-level key gamers, that I'll be able to kind of like flex between both to push IO on both and have a good time and kind of mix things up. Whenever there's moments where I'm not going to be getting IO from keys and still want to push with friends, I probably will weave in more Holy Priest, because with the new tier set and the greater amount of Holy Word Serenities you're cranking out, it feels way, way better to play. I still anticipate there being some struggle areas for the spec at like the highest M+, right? Obviously like 0.1% stuff, but it feels so much better. Oh my god, it feels so much better to be playing Holy Priest in M+, to the point that I enjoy it quite a lot more than what we saw out of like season 1 and like most of season 2 as well. That being said, I'm kind of split on which character I want to have as like my third. Throughout Dragonflight, I've always maintained 3 characters, just because I wanted to. My guild only asks us to maintain a main and an alt, but I always have wanted to just have like more variety whenever I'm playing, because as much as I love having priest and as much as I love having pizza, I don't want to have pizza every single day, right? And so last season I had preservation, and then I started playing Aug, and we had our like augmentation evoker controller series that we did on YouTube, and we were playing some preservation on a controller, things like that. I don't know if I'm going to repeat that process again, but I do want to make sure I have some kind of like concrete goals for Mistweaver or preservation or both. But Monk, I'm like really excited with a lot of the changes that they've had since I kind of fell off playing it since 10.1. The Manatee stuff feels way better, their defensives feel way better, and while they're still very like active, like you have to be very mindful in advance of when you're using your diffuse or dampen as usual, right? Having the bounce back whenever I was playing in higher keys felt substantially better, and I actually felt like I actually had real passive defensives, which is good. Shayloons is super fun. I've been playing with a talent that gives you like more hits on Shayloons, and I think it stacks faster as well. So I feel like I have like a lay on hands for my party just constantly, which is awesome. And having like the little shields you get out of your Celestials is really cool too. That said, when I saw Clouded Focus, to be fair, when I saw Clouded Focus and the build sort of dominating on Plus, I really hated the idea. I like the ramping style of Disc, but I don't want to have like every other healer be a ramping spec, right? And I enjoyed like fist weaving in raids, so maybe I will bite the bullet and just really try to give it my all whenever I do go in with my Monk and start like gearing it up and start raiding with it if I choose to. That's definitely something that seems less attractive to me, for example, than like Preservation Evoker next season, where the tier set and all the free living flames you're tossing out. Whenever I was talking with UT and Volk about the idea of like tossing out Emerald Blossoms and weaving in between living flames for damage or spot healing because they're casting faster from your class tree talent, and just spewing out all these blossoms onto people to heal them up, that sounded like incredibly attractive to me, and that it sounded incredibly fun. And I think that's leaning in the direction of something I might want to do more of as having my third alt. But part of that is also going to be making sure that the raid's going to be more fun. Because I do know that Monk is super fun in dungeons, and I've been having a lot of fun with preservation and like really learning and taking more time to get better at that. Because again, I started playing AUG and it was like, hey, just easy mode and you can kind of turn your brain off. And I found a lot of times with like season 2, there's always that like pressure to like go down the path of least resistance. And then, you know, you can gain all this crazy IO super quickly just playing AUG, but then it just gets kind of like dull, you know? And I think next season I'm going to avoid playing AUG as much as I can, because it just didn't really make me like more engaged, I guess, in the content. And it sort of felt like a just easy way of like, hey, you know, like turn your brain off and not feel as intentional about what you're doing. And like, that's fine sometimes, but having that as like my primary goal, yeah, that was the frustration. But maybe it's honestly that I feel a lot more hope for healing next season, even though our tuning for like PTR has been really weird and awkward going into like normal, actually LFR season 3 gear and doing like high level dungeons is super strange because your health yo-yos like crazy. It's just the idea that like I know how the damage should look when we almost like double our health pools, when we start getting all of the normal, heroic, and then later on mythic gear. I know things are going to feel a hell of a lot better as a result. So for me, it's more like the anticipation and the excitement that I feel of, hey, I know things are not going to be this goofy because the tuning is going to be different, because our health pools are going to be different. And I have, you know, spent a lot of time, been working on figuring out these dungeons and what you need to do. And if it looks like the tank variety is going to be good, that's just going to mean the healer variety is going to be good too. And so for you guys, what would you be interested in for some kind of like alt content? I think I could rename some characters and do a little bit of 0 to hero on stream, but it's a lot of hours and it's a lot of time spent if I was going to do something like that off stream. So that's something I wanted to think about. Overall, I anticipate clearing the raid as disc. There's some really interesting mechanics, and obviously we don't know yet with Harak, but I believe the disc could be really strong in that fight, and there's actually a bit of execute value, which would be really insane for disc, maybe even 2 disc, but again, it's all speculation at this point. But I know that like in a dungeon environment, especially a Prop Halley or VDH, which are both looking really good right now, are going to be in the meta. That's going to be so helpful for disc. And honestly, in general, the better that like tank variety is, the more I'm going to feel comfortable pushing on like all the healers. personally really wish that they would nuke Augmentation Evoker from the skies. But, you know, in lieu of that actually happening, I do think that at least the healer variety is going to be good. Like, I'm not worried about having, like, Prez and Aug in the same group unless you're in, like, some sweaty world first group or something along those lines. Otherwise, like, I think that spec's going to feel really, really strong, really fun to play. So, yeah. I also think these dungeons are a lot better. That's my final thought. Throne of the Tides is a way better successor than Vortex Pinnacle. I guarantee it. They also just announced a bunch of like Dawn of the Infinite nerfs, so that dungeon's gonna feel a lot better too. We just played through, and I think that they actually had just nerfed a couple of them on Sunday, and we just saw it even though it wasn't documented yet, I think. But we went through this Dawn run the other day, and it was like a 24 or 25, and everyone's like, oh, this feels like reasonable. So fingers crossed that that's going to be like the final product for it. Because if so, this season's going to own. It's going to be tough, but it's actually going to own a lot. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any specific goals or some ideas in mind that I could set my mind towards for some of my alts to keep them challenged and to also have some fun along the way. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch y'all next time.